Okay, so you guys have any question? Basically, where we are right now, we are learning about the Arab because we talked about Arab. It has the normal way of doing Arab. We talked about them, the Asli, where we use Dhamma for the Raf and Fatha for the Nasb and the Kasra for the Jar. And we said that Jazm, it's only in the verb. And then we talked about them. Standard noun will follow these Arab. For example, your singular and broken plurals. Then we also mentioned something about the taqdiri, meaning we have to estimate because we can't put this haraka. Okay, so it gets the haraka, it gets its appropriate haraka. In the marfu, it gets dhamma, but we can't see it because of alif, right? And then we started talking about fir'i, furu, which means the branches. So what does it mean is that basically, if the world was perfect, we should be able to put fatha, dhamma, and kasra for all the nouns. If that was the case, trust me, there's no time to spend. We should have gone to the other chapters by now. Okay, because the bottom line is we have these stages or the states of the noun in the grammatical role or the states where we need a way to indicate that that noun belongs to that state. Okay, and we had the system. We have a perfect system. We put dhamma for the raf, we put fatha for the nasb, and we put kasra for the jar. Beautiful. But then we see we have some problems with some types of nouns, and these are called branches. And we still have to know, how do we deal with them? How do we indicate something that is in the rough state? How do we indicate something in the nasb and the jar? Because once we find out how to do them, then we can start talking about how or when something gets into the rough state or all other things, right? So first we need to know, how do we indicate something? And that's where our discussion has been happening for the last few months, right? So we started talking about the branch, and the first branch that we talked about is muthanna, the dual. And where we learned that we cannot put dhamma, so we cannot use the asli. So we, instead of dhamma, what we do is we say the alif. Alif is the indication that this word is in the rough state. And the ya, and ya is for both the nasb and the jar. Okay. Now, so now inshallah, I think last time we wrapped up, alhamdulillah, it took us a little bit, quite some times to talk about or finish the topic of muthanna. The reason why it took us a little bit longer time is because it's not that it was super difficult, it's that some of the idea was new, and I wanted to make sure you understand this concept about the definitions and how we have to follow the definitions, and how do we deal with something that goes beyond the definition. So if this kind of things comes in the future topic, which will come today, and alhamdulillah, conceptually you understand what's happening, so I don't have to explain everything twice, and maybe our discussion will be shorter. Jayed, so if you don't have any questions, let us get started with our book. So where are we now? So we always start with the Ajrumiyyah text, right? Because this is our primary text, Ajrumiyyah. Last time I told you the things that we have covered, I will be highlighting. I think that is a very good thing to do, so we know where we are. So we talked about all of them, right? And I have highlighted them as well. But there are few things we can also highlight. Why? Because we said, the four types of that, something that the Arab is with the haraka. We said that ismul mufrad and jamut takthir, but he also talks about how do you do them. Kulluha, all of them, yurfa'u bid dhamma wa yunsabu bil fatha wa yukhfadu. Remember what khafd means. Khafd is jar. Wa yujarru bil kasra wa yujzamu bis sukun. Okay, so these things we understand already. We talked about them, so I can highlight them. And what he's talking about here is very, very important, and it will take us a long time. This is Mamnu Min As-Sarf. Inshallah, we'll talk about them maybe next week or so. Okay, then he started talking about the things that changes with the letters, huruf, right? And we only talked about muthanna, and inshallah today we will be talking about jamu mudhakkar as-salim. Okay, so he said, فَأَمَّا التَّثْنِيَةُ, the muthanna, فَتُرْفَعُ بِالْأَلِيفِ. So we already know that. So he's saying that for Muthanna, we do the raf with the alif. وَتُنْسَبُ وَتُنْسَبُ وَتُجَرُّ, because I don't want to read تُخْفَضُ, it's just going to confuse you. وَتُجَرُّ بِالْيَاءِ. Okay, so this much we understand. We use alif for the raf and ya for the both nasb and jar for the muthanna. And inshallah, we'll be start talking about our next topic. So now for today, inshallah, we will start about Jam'ul Mudhakkari Salim, which is what? What does it mean? It means the plural, basically. Mudhakkar is, we know, the masculine. Salim here means sound. Okay, sound masculine plural, something like that. So what does he say? He said ta'rifuhu, which is a definition, its definition. Huwa ma dalla ala akthar min ithnain biziyadatin waw wa nun wa ya wa nun ala mufradih. Okay, so something, remember the definition, they're always technical and we have to understand what they mean. So basically he's saying that it means something that is more than two. Okay, something that is more than two. And here you can see, very interesting. Last time, remember when we talked about mufrad, it says wahidun wa wahidatun, right? One, it use both masculine and feminine. And muthanna, that's what's the case. It says ithnan aw ithnatan. They wanted to make sure that you understand both masculine and feminine. Here, it's only talking about ithnain. Why? Because we're talking about the mudhakkar. So there's, we're not bringing muannath here. We're not saying ithnatain. You understand? See how precise they are. How do you do this? So what's the technique? By ziyadatin waw and noon. So we add waw and noon, or we add ya and noon, where? Ala mufradi, on its singular. So whatever the singular is, we have to add waw and noon and ya and noon. And now remember last time we had, this is something that I mentioned in last class, that be careful in the grammar book, they really don't mention about the haraka, because in Muthanna, we also had ya and noon for the nasb and the jar. For the Muthanna, it was what? Before ya, you need fatha, so it was aini sound. Okay, here is, it will be noon with the fatha. It will be ina. The Muthanna was aini, it would be ina. You understand? So make sure you understand this thing. So here we have some example. So we have mu'min and we have mu'minuna. Okay, we talked about them. So the mufrad is mu'min and we added una sound to make it into plural. And then we can do the same thing with the ya and nun. We have mu'min and we say mu'minina. If you say mu'minaini, what happens? It means two believers. And mu'minina, because without haraka, because most of the books you will see that they don't put any haraka. So without haraka, you would not know, whether it is without the context. Of course, you would not know at all whether it's a dual or the plural. But of course, with the context, you would understand. So make sure you know the sound. It is mu'minina. Make sense? Basically, that is the definition of the sound plural. So what is hukm? So that means we want to know how do we do i'rab. It says yurfa'u bil waw. Okay, remember last time what we said, even though we are saying we add waw and noon, al mu'minuna, but in terms of i'rab, what do we say? We say it is yurfa'u bil waw. So only waw counts. The noon, what did we say about the noon? We call it noonun i'rab. It's just a name, noonun i'rab, but what does it mean? If you want to really know what it means, some of the scholars explain that this is similarities with the noon sakina of the mufrad. You understand? You make sure you understand that we don't care about the noon. We only say that it is marfu by waw. And yunsabu wa yujarru bil ya. Same thing, we don't care about the noon. We only say the ya. So both for nasb state and the jar state, it would be ya. So here we have some example. It's from the Quran. قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ. Yes, so remember last time I mentioned, good question, she asked, because if you think about tanween perspective, so we know that tanween doesn't come in the alif lam, so why does the noon, this noon of Arab shows up? This is a good question, but the only thing we can say that as an exception. So the tanween, in the normal tanween, the tanween itself will only, we can only remove tanween when we have alif lam and and mudaf. But as for this noon of Arab, noonul Arab, we can only remove in the mudaf. For example, we have mu'minun, mu'minun, right? So mu'minun, and then you want to say the believer of the city, okay? Al-Madina, right? So here we know that we cannot have tanwin. So a sister is saying, okay, so we can remove the tanwin. So we have mu'minul Madina. So what would happen when we say two believers of the city? It would be mu'minani. No, we cannot say that because we know the rules. Last time we mentioned, we have to drop this noon. I cannot remove this thing. Subhanallah. It would be mu'mina. Just remove that. Mu'minal Madina. Make sense? And same thing would happen with our what? Our sound plural. Because this noon is the same thing as the noon Arab. So we'll say mu'minuna. No, we cannot say the mu'minun al-Madina. We cannot say like that. We have to drop this noon. Okay? So we have to say mu'minul Madina. Only drop the noon. So something that I don't want to mention right now here because we haven't studied the verbs here. But remember, in the verbs, when we have waw at the end, we always add alif. Okay? So we say zahabu. You understand? So just remember, we don't add anything because that's another discussion I want to properly discuss when we go there. But here, only thing we do is drop the noon. We don't add anything. We don't do anything else. So we say mu'minul Madina. Okay. So this is the only time we can remove noon. Now she's asking, can we? No, we cannot remove the noon when we add alif. Al-mu'minuna. Okay, good question, but keep that in mind. They will just say this is an exception. Or whether you say an exception or the difference between tanween and nun al-i'rab, however you say, you have to know this. Okay, makes sense? Now, so the verse that we have here is قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ. Right, as you can see, the verb is aflaha, is to be success, right? So, and by the way, what part of speech is this one, aflaha? Ism, fi'l, harf, what is it? How do you know? What is your alama? How do you know this is a, maybe you don't know the meaning. How do you know? How do you know this is a verb? Alif? Alif, I can have aqsam, aqlam. No, I can say aqlamal something, fatha ending. If I say ra'aytu aqlamal walad, I saw the pants of the boy. I can have Hamza, I can have fatha. I see guys quickly forgetting what I taught you. Think about from this class perspective. What are the alama of the fi'l? No, alama of the fi'l is not Hamza. I never taught you that. Think about what I taught you. Qad, guys, I spend so much time. If the qad enters on a word, then the word after qad is always what? Fi'l. We had a long discussion about the qad. See how it comes into play. Sometimes maybe you don't know because, as I said, the noun can take fatha. So when you have a qad, you have to know what's coming next. Next has to be a verb. There's no exception. Make sense? Now, so here saying قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ. So here mu'min is the subject file. You understand? And then we have then we have the example وَبَشِّرِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. وَبَشِّر is a command verb to give glad tidings, to give a good news. So here you see the verbs coming to give a good news, and then it needs, we're talking good news to whom, and here is your object. Here is maf'ul bihi. وَبَشِّرِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. And now because it is object, is maf'ul bihi, and in the state of nasb, and we cannot say mu'minuna anymore, we have to bring ya. We have to say mu'minina. Make sense? And then here we have radiyallahu anil mu'minina. Allah is pleased with, see, you have an, so you know what's going to happen after an is majroor. And what is the alama? Huh? What would you say? What is the alama of the jar? It would be ya. Make sense? So this much, alhamdulillah, we understand this is in the basic level. That is what we know about the mudhakkar salim, and that's what we have to know. Inshallah, I will go to the I will go to our notes so that we can fill this one up as well. So last time we said muthanna. Now we'll do what? Jamul mudhakkar salim. For example, we have mu'minuna, right? And we have mu'minina, and we have mu'minina. So now what is the i'rab? We say marfu, right? What is the alama? Alamatu raf'ihi. Are you guys getting familiar with this thing? The reason why I do this, and I really want you to get comfortable. I'm pretty sure you're a little bit comfortable with these kind of terms. And this is very important because I'm telling you, this is the language of the grammar books. You know, anything you want to find out, what is the i'rab, what's the role is playing, that's the language they will speak. They will say it like that, and you have to know how to read it and how to understand. So here when we say that it is marfu alamatu raf'ihi, what would we say? Who can help me complete this? Yes, al. Wow, brother is very happy. He's like, wow, he got it. Okay, and here it will be mansub. Okay, ala bihi al ya. Okay. Now the thing is, remember what I'm saying is, if you say wow, it's not quite good enough, because I told you that, anytime you say something beyond what is the standard or asal, you have to give a reason why you're saying this is wow. Because when you say marfu, we are thinking about dhamma. If you cannot say dhamma dhahira, you can, if you cannot say dhamma, either dhahira or muqaddara. Even in muqaddara, sometimes they will write why. Okay, so for example, here they will say li ta'adhur. I told you I'm not barring, but it's good to know. Maybe I will write it down next time. You have to say why you are doing muqaddar. Why? Then you have to say because it's ta'adhur, and you do muqaddar in the manqus because of thiqal. It is difficult, right? So they will write everything. That's good. You want to be very explicit. I don't have any problem with that, right? For example, here we mentioned li annahu muthanna, because it is dual. So now here we have to say the same thing. We have to say li annahu, you can say jamu mudhakkar salim. Okay, because it is mudhakkar salim. Okay, I'll just copy this much here. Make sense, guys? Jayyid, alhamdulillah. So this is for our jamu mudhakkar salim. So now that is what we know, what we have to know about mudhakkar salim. But now we have to have few discussion about this topic. Okay, so we already read this thing from the other book, and he's pretty much saying the same thing. He's giving the same examples. But the discussion that we want to have here is a short discussion. Is when do we do this thing? It sounds very simple and easy. Why can't we just put wow and noon all the time and make our life easier? We don't want to make our life difficult. We want to make it easy. Unfortunately, in Arabic language, most of the plurals are broken. That is very unfortunate for the students, for us, including myself. Even now, I get frustrated when I have to learn a plural, right? But that's the situation. But then the question comes, then if we have this nice technique of adding waw and noon, why can't we just do this in every single time? So in Arabic, we have a shurut, we have a conditions of the sound plural. When these conditions are met, then you can make it. You cannot just put waw and noon in everything you want. Okay, so there are the conditions. So what are these conditions? Here he mentions, he divided into two ways. One, he's saying yashrutu fil alam an yakun. So he separated by alam, which is what proper noun, and also an adjective. He's going to talk about adjectives separately. But all of them, it comes down to these two things. It has to be mudhakkar, of course, it makes sense. And it has to be aqil. It has to be intellect. It cannot be a thing. But then there's other issues, these are not super important, but you have to know, because it could be something is mudhakkar and it could be something that is aqal, but then if it has ta uta'nith, which is ta marbuta, then it's not going to work. You cannot make waw noon. For example, you have hamza, right? But before I say something, a lot of people, you don't know that you can make plural with the proper nouns. I don't know if in English we do that or not. It's not common, but you can do it. For example, if you have Muhammad, let me use the word that the grammarian loves so much, which is what? Zaid. I'm pretty sure they had one student named Zaid, and he was really giving them hard time. And that's so Zaidun. So that means one Zaid. Zaidun, it's one person's name. But you can say Zaidani. That means we're talking about two Zaid, right? You can say that. So meaning you have a friend circle and you have two friends, both of them, their name are same, and you want to talk about them, you can say Zaidani. Both of the Zaid came, something like that, right? But what happens is that it loses its definiteness, like the super definiteness that we understand, it loses that. That's a different topic, inshallah, I'll discuss when we go to the ma'rifa, which it will be very interesting topic there. Same thing you can also do based on these definitions, saying it has to be what? Alam. It has to be proper noun, and it needs to be mudhakkar, and it needs to be aqil. Well, then I know somebody's name is Zaid. I can definitely do Zaiduna. Yes, you can definitely do Zaiduna. What he's saying is that you cannot do Hamza. You cannot do Hamza. Why not? Actually, the name is pronounced, I think, with the ha. Why can't you do Hamza? It's a name, proper noun, and the mudhakkar, all of them, we know it's the name of a male person, and it's aqil, because the condition here is that it cannot have ta marbuta. So you cannot say zaidatuna. You can't say that. Yes. So that's the exception we have to be aware of. And he's saying it cannot be tartib, meaning it cannot be compound noun. Okay. So these are not super important, as long as you understand, some of them are common sense. Most of them are common sense. But the only thing you have to know that it has to be aqil. Okay, so then he gives all this example here. Hamza talks about you cannot do this. So, you understand them, I already mentioned. So now the second type of words that we can make into sound plural is what? Sifa, the adjectives. So this is more useful. The sifa, making the waw noon, is more useful, and you will see that this is something that we should be able to do without any sweat, because we have to describe something, and imagine we have to have broken plural for every sifa. It would be super difficult, and unfortunately a lot of those sifa, they have their own broken plural. Okay, so I'll talk about them. So what does it mean? What are the conditions? Same conditions, nothing new. It has to be mudhakkar, common sense, and it has to be aqil. This is very, very important, meaning you're describing something that is aqil. And the same rule that other one we had, which is that it cannot have tamarbuta. Okay, so now this sifa cannot be in a certain form. One of the form is that it cannot be in the af'al form. Not only it cannot be in af'al form, it cannot be af'al form which has the mu'annath It says الذي مؤنثه, whose feminine version is the فعلاء. It's very complicated because you guys are not familiar with these words anyway, but I'll just simply say so that it's easy. Think about your color name. Ahmar. See? Afal. You see the pattern? Azraq. Azraq. You see the pattern? So this word falls in this pattern. So does what? So does ahsan. Okay? And or afdal. Now you have to understand, this is important, that you see both of them has this afal form, right? You have ahmar and ahsan. They both have the same form. But the issue, what you have to know, that what is their female? The female of ahmar is hamra, which is this form, fa'ala. Okay, so we say hamra. And if that's the case, then you cannot do waw and nun. That's what they're saying. And same thing, if you have a fa'alan, which is another form like atshan, okay, whose female version is fa'ala, atsha, then you cannot do waw and nun. Why? Because they have their own plural. That's the whole thing. Because these are very specific words, and then they have their whole sets of how we do plural. They have their own rules. So now what we can do, like, let's first see some examples, the thing that we can do. For example, we can say jalisun. Okay, somebody who's sitting, and you can say jalisuna. See, it is, you can just add waw and nun. Okay, mahir. Mahir is somebody who is skilled at something. You can say mahiruna. Okay, so bottom line, most of the sifa, something that describes a masculine and has aqil, intellect, doesn't have ta marbuta, you should be able to do waw and nun. Exceptions are, the main exception is that it falls into this pattern, like ahmar, because their plural is humrun. It has a different plural. Okay, so I don't want to teach all of the things. Inshallah, those things you will see them in the Kitab al-Asasi and other books. Just be aware of this kind of sound. Ahmar, like afal. And now then you have to know whether, right now, to make it easy, just think about your color name. I think that is the best way to think about. Think about your color name. And if it's not your color name, but if it's ismu tafdil, like for example, ahsan, now here you can, no problem. Here you can add waw and nun. You can say afdaluna, that's fine. Ahsanuna, you can say that. But only thing, just keep in your mind that right now, to make things easy, think about the color name. But there are other words that falls under this group as well, which are not colors. Make sense? It's a little bit technical, but I think you should be aware of. Another thing I want to warn you, that sometimes, even if it doesn't fall under these conditions, what might happen is that they have their own specific broken plural. So if any word, they have their own specific broken plural, then we should use that plural instead. Like jadid, judud. We should use the judud instead of saying jadiduna, something like that. You understand? Something that you will learn with your experience, but this is the conditions of adding waw and nun. By and large, I'll tell you something. By and large, if you add waw and nun when these conditions are met, you are fine. You're in the safe side. If you make mistakes, if somebody says, you should use the other plural, that's fine. This is not a big mistake. You understand? Just keep this thing in your mind. Any questions? So I'm not going to read everything here because I summarized here. They're talking about ahmar, akhdar. These are the things you cannot add waw and nun because it falls. And same thing goes with atshan. You cannot add waw and nun because they have their own plural. Jayid. So for example, here giving this you can do. Akbar, asghar, afdal. Akbar, you can say akbaruna. Asgharuna, you can say that. That's no problem. Understand? Because their musanna is not in the same form as the conditions stated. Okay, so here they're giving us very nice, if you have the book, they're giving us some of the nouns which falls under all the conditions, so we can make واو and noon in all of them. مسلمون مسلمون مؤمنون مؤمنون مجتهد مجتهدون عالم عالمون قائم قائمون, all of these things that we have here we can add واو and noon. So the second discussion that we have around this topic is the mulhaq. Remember last time we talked about the mulhaq on the musanna, so now you know what the mulhaq means. It basically means we have some words, it goes outside of what of the definition. Okay, so this is, and what do we do with them? Because those words, Arab is the same. The Arab is exactly like our Jamu Mudhakkar as-Salim, but it doesn't fall under definition. Now there are lots of them. I'm not definitely, there's no way we need to know all of them. Even he gives the most famous of them is he gave some of them, but even with all of this list, there's no way we can cover all of them. I just want to maybe do few of them. One of them is ulu. I'll do the ulu. And yashruna, this is something important you have to know. And maybe alamuna. These are the three things, three words we want to talk about. But the concept is the same thing. See, now because we spend a little bit time on the muthanna, what are we talking about? Now the concept is the same. You understand what it means. When we say al-mulhaq bil jam' al-mudhakkar as-salim, we're talking about that we have words that they act like the mudhakkar as-salim in terms of i'rab, but it does not fall under the definition. Now we will see one by one of them, why they don't fall under the definition. Okay, so the first one is ulu. What is ulu? Ulu is, it means like it means to own something, it's like a possessive, like you possess something, you be owner of something, to have something. You understand? So ulu, this is one of, and they call it ismu jam'in. This is another interesting word in Arabic you have to know, which means the noun itself is the plural. Sometimes we have a noun, even the single, because you don't have any other singular, but the word itself gives you plural meaning. One of them is qawm. The qawm is people. The word itself gives you the meaning of the plural. Those kind of word, they say ismu jam'in. So ismu jam. So these are the words that word itself gives you the plural meaning. So what's the problem with that? They're saying la wahida lahu min lafdhihi. There is no singular for this word. In lafdhihi, meaning in the same words, same letters. So we don't have the singular of these things, because remember the definition. That's why you have to think about the definition. It says adding waw and noon in the mufrad, in its singular, and it makes sense. Otherwise, why we're saying that this is jamul mudhakkar salim? Because having waw and noon, you can have waw and noon in many different things. Doesn't mean that it's going to be the same i'rab. So the definition is important. So here they're saying we don't have any singular, so we don't have any ul while we add waw and noon. But they're saying innama wahiduhu min ma'anahu, meaning only we have its singular by its meaning, which is dhu. Dhu also means to have something, to be owner of something, to possess something. Inshallah, we'll be talking about dhu extensively in the next topic, or next week when we talk about al-asma'ul khamsa. Okay, so what they're saying is that meaning wise we can come up with a word that has a similar meaning, but as you can see, it is not the same word. So we don't say dhu and add waw and noon and we have ulu all of a sudden. No, that's not the case. So that's why we put them in this category of mulhaq. And when we say mulhaq and we know its i'rab is going to be the same. Okay, so for example, here Allah says, "Fasbir kama sabara ulul azmi minar rusul." So be patient as the one of who strove, work hard or be steadfast from the messengers. So see, it is now, it is in the marfu state. And what is the alama of the raf? Alama of the raf is what? Wow. And that's exactly what we have here. Makes sense? And we see, here's another one. in the Quran, وَلَوْ كَانُوا أُولِي الْقُرْبَى. Okay, وَلَوْ كَانُوا أُولِي الْقُرْبَى. So now you probably don't know why this is what kind of state, because we haven't talked about kana. Inshallah, we'll be talking about kana. I'll just mention it, what's going on. Kana needs two nouns. One of the noun is going to be marfu, and another noun will have a proper discussion. I'm just saying it very lame way right now. Another noun should be in what? In the nasb state. So this is the second noun. So it should be in the nasb state. So this word is in the nasb because this is khabar of kana. Khabar of kana is always nasb. So now how do we know it's nasb? Because it has ya. And by the way, so the question is, let me see who's thinking a little bit. Sometimes I want you to guys think, guys. You guys have to think. So tell me why we don't have any noon here. Why don't we have noon? We don't have noon here and we don't have noon here. What would be your answer? Because you might be thinking if it's mudhakkar salim, it should be ulun. It dropped for what? Yes, it's definitely it's missing, but why? Yes, the noon of Arab is dropped. So why do you think, so what do you think this word is in the state? When do we drop the noon of Arab? Yes, idafa. So ulu will always, most of the time, I don't think we see ulu outside of idafa. Ulu will always be mudaf, just like the one we did kila. Remember, it should be, kilani, but we never see the noon because the kila always comes in idafa. It is always mudaf. So you always see kila. And this is the same situation. So what we're saying is that it will always be in the mudaf, and that's why we are missing these things. So basically, bottom line is in this ayah, this is in the nasb state. It is khabar kana. Khabar kana is always mansub, and that's why we have ya. Look what it says. Khabar kana mansub wa alamatu nasbihi ya. Okay. And then we have one more example. Inna fi dhalika li ibratan li ulil absar. Look at here, we have li, and what state is ulu right now? It is in the jar state, right? Why? Because we have harful jar li. You understand? So now, as you can see, this word is definitely doing the i'rab of the jamul mudhakkar salim, without a doubt. Okay, it's doing the i'rab exactly like that. But the problem is what? The problem is it does not follow the definition, and it makes sense. Technically, it should not be jamul mudhakkar salim. And you will know why we have to talk about, because of this one, ashrun. So we're going to be skipping some of the other ones. Here's the ashrun. It says ashrun wa babuhu. It's a big chapter, but we'll only talk about the numbers here. So ashrun, what is ashrun? Guys, the numbers. numbers. See, we've been talking about numbers. Ashrun is another important number in Arabic grammar, and it also has a name. If something is important, they always give name. The last one, remember, al-a'dadul murakkaba, we talked about, and this one has the name, is called al-fadhul uqud. So somebody said ashrun is 10. Yes, it's 20. You see the ashara, right? So it sounds like 10. But yes, be careful. This is 20. Ashrun is 20. We are all weak in the number. Even myself, I have to be careful sometimes because and that's going to happen to all of you if you are not paying attention right now. One of the worst things that I did is that I really delayed numbers because I hated the numbers. And the more I delayed, the harder it became on me. So here we're only talking about the numbers that is multiple of 10. Basically, I'll tell you what, it's just 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, and 90. That's it. These are the numbers. It is called al-fadhul uqud. You understand? So only these numbers, we have these waw and noon. So how do we say? Look, you have the whole list. Ishruna, thalathuna. It's kind of easy, except for the first one. Definitely, first one is a little bit confusing because it sounds like 10. But except for the first one, the other ones are very easy. Thalathun is 3. And una, it's a plural, so you can think of like that. So the plural, so that means it will be 30. Arba, arba is 4, and you have una, so it will be a 40. Khams, which is 5, and we have una, so think of like that. Okay, I think it will be easy. This number is not that difficult, honestly. So we have ashruna, thalathuna, arbauna, khamsuna, sittuna, sab'una, thamanuna, and tis'una. So all of this una, una, una. Where is the problem? Maybe sometimes you might think, well, where is the problem? We have the word. We have the word. We have the 5, khamsa, and we're just adding wow noon. But the definition says, you know, it's not the same way, because it doesn't mean adding wow noon, it makes it into plural. It's not the situation. It makes it into certain number. So it's not, we're saying more than 3 5s. Then it would be the case. If khamsun meant that you have 3 or 5 or more, or 4 or 5, yeah, then the definition makes sense. But here, that's not the case. Okay, so that's not the case. So that's what's happening. So I don't have to go through, I'm not going to be going through the examples here, because you understand what's going to happen. Basically, we'll have, for example, khamsuna. When you say ja'a khamsuna, our famous examples. This is much easier, right? But honestly, I love this book because of what? Because this book gives you a lots of Quranic example. Interestingly, this book, look at what they did. This is something very interesting. I found it very fascinating, because they're claiming, of course, that's true. They're saying is that every single number of this Alfad al-Wuqud has appeared in the Quran. Subhanallah, this is crazy, right? Every single one of them. Shurun came, Talathun came, Arbaun came. Can you imagine? Khamsin here, it came in, a different form, right? Then all of the numbers came, right? So, but we don't have to go all of them, so we can just simply understand what's going on. So we have Ja'a Khamsuna, we know this is Marfu, and we have Wow, and we can say Ra'aytu Khamsina. We will say Khamsina, just like your Jamu Mudhakkar Salim. So what would we say? Who can tell me? Marar to be, what am I going to say? How am I going to say 15, 50? Khamsin, yes, Khamsina, yes. Khamsina, excellent. You understand? So that's all there it is. Because the shurun, it's very simple. You understand, it even looks like your standard sound plural. The only thing is that the definition is the problem. The next one that we will be talking about is, and the last one we'll be talking about, is alamuna. This is interesting in few ways. It is also, now let me explain something. The word we have a singular, which is alamun. So alam, it means what? It means world. Okay, alam, it means world, like a world, not the world sense. No, not that art. That's what I'm trying to explain. The one is alam, it's not the earth, like earth. The alam means like everything has their own world. No, not even like the universe. You can think of like that, because it is a universe, but everything else also has their own world. The word is kind of interesting. It has its own broken plural, which is awalim. Here you can think of, when you use the word as a universe, as a plural, then it has its own broken plural, right? The word is very difficult to explain. For example, everything has their own world. The fish, they have their own world. The birds, they have their own world, meaning they live in their own universe, so to speak. They live in their own ways. Okay, we can interact with them, but they have their own ways of looking at things. So this kind of world, right? And yes, you can definitely think about, because when you combine everything, of course, you can think about the universe and everything. Now, somebody might argue, so why are you saying that alamuna is a problem? Because we have alam, and we can add waw nun, and you have alamuna. But issue is, when we say alamuna, the meaning a little bit changes. Because when we say alam, it can be world of animals, world of things, world of anything. But when we say alamuna, it means only for the aqil, for the intellect. Okay, so this is, it's a little bit picky. I also, for my taste, I find it a little bit picky. They really didn't have to go that far, but from the meaning perspective, we have a problem. Look what he's saying. He's saying is ismul jamu, right? But he's saying huwa la yattafiqu ma mufradihi fil ma'na. Meaning they're not saying you don't have a mufrad. Yes, we have a mufrad, alam, but he's saying it doesn't agree with its mufrad in terms of its meaning, because here's alam I can describe with anything. That world of the jinn, the world of the animals, world of the trees. Even they, in the hadith, they said the world of the tree, they have their own world. Okay, so they have this kind of world. So but that plural, if you talk about the world of the trees, then you have to use the plural of this one, awalim. Because why? The tree is not aqil. So this is where the problem happens that when is alamuna, you cannot say directly that this is plural, because then we get into the meaning problem. Alamuna is only uh, for the aqil. It makes sense. I don't know if you understood or not, because if you say alamuna, it has a singular, then we have to say alam is only for aqil, but that's not true. Because if alam is only for aqil, then yes, alamuna, we don't have any problem. It falls under your standard definition. But they're saying no, alam, it can be world of anything, living or non-living, doesn't matter. But alamuna, it only is talking about the akal. That's the only thing. It's a little bit, as I mentioned to you, it's a little bit, picky here. We still appreciate, because we understand how careful. That's the whole point. The point is, I'm trying to explain to you that they're very keen of making very precise, and this is so beautiful. Because why? By now knowing this thing, every time you say alamuna, you know that we're talking about something that is intellect. Okay, for example, we have al-alamuna rabbuhumullahu. So the world, their God is Allah. Okay, khalaqallahu alamin. Allah has created the worlds. Okay, and of course we have this thing in the Quran, but it comes as a majroor state, which is alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. So who can tell me why this is majroor? Yes, it is mudaf ilayhi. That's why. So now somebody might argue, since he mentioned about the meaning, so I'll explain to you. Somebody might argue that we're talking about the worlds of everything. So isn't Allah Lord of the world of the tree, the Lord of the world of the animals? And you're saying that it only talks about aqil. What would be your answer? It's one of the fundamental of in Arabic grammar and the language also. So if they insist that alamin or alamun, it's only for the intellect. That's why they're having whole discussion about this whole word. So why is Allah saying that He is the Lord of the alamin, and which would indicate that Allah is saying that He's the Lord of human being and jinn and angels, but He's not. He's excluding the world of the universe, the world of the animals, the world of the trees and everything. Doesn't that what it implies? Bottom line is, remember, in Arabic language, we have something called this, something that overcomes something. In the language, we have something overcoming something else, meaning a mudhakkar will always overcome a muannath. If we have 20 women, I explained to you before, this is a good topic actually, since we're talking about this is part of what we're discussing, so I can explain here. If we have a 20 women, then of course we will be using muannath to describe them. For example, we'll say hunna, right? Let's just use the pronoun hunna. But as soon as you have one male here, even if it's a boy, if we have one mudhakkar, you cannot use hunna anymore. You have to use whom. You have to use whom. Why? Because the way the Arabic language works is that it overcomes. This is only language perspective, guys. Don't get feminism on me. It is only the language perspective, right? So this is what happens. So in the language perspective, you will. So we cannot use the hun anymore. The mudhakkar will overtake the muannath. So here, yes, the issue is with the aqil. So if you have bunch of things, if there's one aqil exist, it will overcome the other ones. Make sense? So because Allah is talking about everything, and we have a human being and everything, now of course we have to use the aqil version. We cannot use the ghair aqil version. Make sense, guys? So I think that is all from what we wanted to mention about mudhakkar as-salim.